Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have the honor of speaking with Darlene Greene, a retired U.S. Navy commander whose remarkable career spans over 20 years. Darlene's journey is a testament to resilience, leadership, and innovation with 3 commanding officer tours and a master's degree from the Naval Postgraduate School. She's also the founder of the Returning Warrior Weekend, a program that has helped countless military members and their families reintegrate successfully after service. In addition to her distinguished military career, Darlene has made significant strides in the civilian sector. She's a stem cell activation technology consultant, helping individuals improve their health and well-being without pharmaceuticals. Her passion for helping others is also evident in her co-authorship of the 2024 best-selling book, Become Empowered: Echoes of Grace and Strength. Today, Darlene will share her journey from military service to entrepreneurship, the challenges she faced, and her ongoing mission to improve the lives of veterans and their families through innovative health solutions. Join us as we delve into the story of Darlene Greene, a true strategic veteran dedicated to leading and inspiring others, the next generation of leaders. Darlene, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Adam. It's really an honor to be on your show.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So let's just jump right in. Let's talk about where you grew up and kind of what inspired you to join the Navy.
Sure. So, I love the question, like, where are you from? And, when you're a military brat, you don't really have a good answer to that. Well, wherever we were living at the time. We moved around a lot. My dad was a 30-year Air Force colonel, pilot, F-4 Phantom squadron commander, and over 100 missions over Vietnam. So we moved a lot, but I did spend some time, kindergarten through 6th grade, in Litchfield Park, Arizona, outside of Luke Air Force Base. Loved Arizona, so always kind of wanted to come back, and that's where I'm stemming from that right now is Chandler, Arizona, not too far from those original roots, but kind of all over. I did get to see, jets and him go to and from work in a flight suit every day, and thought that was pretty darn cool. I remember the first time he brought home a picture of the first female jet pilots in the Air Force. And I looked at that picture and I thought, those are the coolest women on the planet. Like, there were no cooler people on the planet than those 7, I think it was 7 women actually. And I thought that I would like to do that one day. And so that was always in the back of my mind, I think. And then when you get to high school and you're like, what do you want to do? And I don't know, but that sounds pretty good. So I ended up going to University of Virginia on a Navy ROTC scholarship. And really, it was that or University of Arizona on an Air Force ROTC scholarship. And I chose the Navy, although that broke my dad's heart a little bit, actually.
Yeah,
even
right.
my commissioning day, he's like, I could still get you an Air Force commission.
Oh, wow.
But then I was bleeding Navy, they indoctrinate you for 4 years. So looking back on that, I think the Air Force has a higher quality of life, but I would not have had the amazing command experiences, I don't think, that I was able to have in the Navy. So I really did love my Navy career. So I started, right after college, right? I was commissioned the weekend I graduated, and I was off.
Wow. I have a similar story. I graduated a month to the day before I shipped to basic training. So like my whole adult life was Army until 30 years old because I was medically retired. So I definitely relate to that. And so you were a military brat. So is Arizona what you would consider home?
Yes, I think only because it's the place that stole my heart. And what happened when I went to UVA was my dad did his final tour at Elmendorf Air Force Base as the vice commander of the Alaskan Air Command. And so he went to Anchorage, Alaska, and they stayed there. Like I'll never forget my mom. My mom was a city girl. Like this was not her cup of tea. And so when my dad got stationed to Alaska, she's just like, I don't even know how I'm going to survive this, but it's just 4 years. I can do this. I can do anything for 4 years, right? Well, it turned out to be, okay, I'm going to do 5 years. Well, 27 years later, they came out of Alaska. So they did not, my dad loved it. Hunting, fishing, flying, like this was his candy land, right? So they went, because they were in Alaska, though, part of her criteria was I will get out of here twice a year for 2 weeks at a time, Christmas and in February. And often Christmas was in Arizona. So wherever all the kids were, we would convene in Arizona, which is another reason it always felt like home to me, I think, because we would have big holidays here. I mean, nobody wants to go to Alaska at Christmas time.
Yeah, of course. I got orders to go to Alaska after my second deployment. I was at Fort Stewart at the time, and I was like, man, this is not the place I want to go. And hindsight's 2020 because they stopped, moved me, deleted my orders, and sent me on a third deployment. And all I wanted at that point was to get out of Fort Stewart and go experience some more of the Army, you know? So I totally get it. I don't think I would have liked Alaska because I don't do well in cold. That's why I live in Florida, and, you know, like we're not going there. You said you were initially inspired to fly jets like your dad. I also wanted to join to fly. However, we have problems with our eyes. So talk about that. What did you not know that until you got to
No,
ROTC?
I had 2020 going into college, and it wasn't until I think my second year in college, I was sitting in the same seat as the year before, and I could not read the chalkboard anymore. And I was thinking, I've got a problem. And so I remember being home in Alaska, and I got an eye exam, and I was like 20/80. And this was the first time I knew my dad really wanted me in the military or flying, because he said, "Well, we'll just get a second opinion. We'll go somewhere else." And I said, "Dad, I literally can't see the chalkboard. I know there's a problem with my eyes." So yeah, that was exactly what happened. And they were barely letting women in fighters. I mean, so there was a possibility of being a backseater for me, but I just, honestly, Adam, I didn't want to be a second class citizen twice. I was already a woman in the Navy, and being a backseater to the front seater, I was just like, I just don't think my ego can handle it. So I just couldn't do that.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because I just did a show with Alex Tessier. She runs Billets. It's a whole kind of Airbnb program for the DoD system. She's also an Air Force veteran, and she talked a lot about not the same language, but being a second class citizen as a female in the military. So I feel like it's kind of my responsibility because I don't agree with that at all. Like we're all called to serve something larger than ourselves. And I think that should all be respected across the board. I don't have the experiences because I was an infantryman, so I wasn't around females. But what is that? Why is that? And can you talk about your experience like that? Because I think it is important for women, you know, veteran entrepreneurs to tell that side of the story. Because I think in some ways, you guys deal with a lot more adversity than the men do, and I think that's very true. So I want to call light to this, and it's like let's change this for women.
Yeah, I wish, and I hope we do, because I have a daughter who went to the Air Force Academy and is in the Air Force right now. I have another daughter who went to the Naval Academy and is in the Navy right now. And I had two sons, Marines, and one is now transitioned to the Navy and is actually flying. He's flying helicopters. So it was funny for me to hear their first experience of discrimination, and they were just like, what is going on? How is this possible? And I said, oh honey, stand by. This is just the beginning. I guess I can't even think of a tour of duty that I did where I didn't face discrimination and sexual harassment. Honestly, the every place I would go, I started as a -10, and I'd have to work my way up to ground zero. And then I'd have to work my way into the number one slot. Like I would be the best. It was just proving it and working harder and smarter and being willing to do the best job possible. So what was it like? It was like, it was being dismissed before you got started. It was like not being taken seriously at all. And I remember my first commanding officer job, you'll appreciate this story, but it was in Southeast Texas. And I was the first woman commanding officer. And I was having trouble because there were not a lot of women who even had master's degrees or did business in Southeast Texas in this small place. And so here I am with 100 and something, mostly men. And I was trying to figure out, how do I earn their respect quickly? Because you don't have a lot of time, right? And I even had the situation where one of my reservists walked up on our quarterdeck. We were both in uniform, kissed me on the mouth.
Jesus
and I was
Christ, come on.
like, wait, stop. What are you doing? And he's like, I'm just saying hello. And I said, let me introduce you to a handshake. And he said, but it doesn't demonstrate my affection and how much I'm excited to see you. And I said, let me introduce you to the double handshake. you know? But I had an admiral kiss me in the Pentagon. I had another admiral kiss me in the officers club. I had, really lewd comments that, in fact, my first time learning to be commanding duty officer, the senior guy who had to sign off on my qualifications really kind of insinuated, you'll sleep with me or I'm not signing the paperwork. And I was like, I called my dad actually, and I was like, I don't even know where to begin with this. And he said, confront him first and tell him if he does it again, you'll take it to the commanding officer. And so my dad offered me some good guidance, because I was just like, I don't even know where to begin. But I got better every tour. Like I just kind of learned to call it out and say, please don't do that. It's unacceptable to me. And let's get past it. And sometimes this was my boss. Sometimes it, it was really awkward. I was an equal opportunity officer for a boss, and he has taken my equal opportunity picture off the wall. He's got it in his desk. He won't give it back. So the command is calling me and saying, I need another one. And then he's like telling me all the ways he's going to sexually please me. And I was just like, okay, you cannot talk this way to me. First of all, I'm under your command. Second of all, I'm your equal opportunity officer. I have to keep you from saying this to anybody. And at the time when I had that conversation, I thought, this is going to be the end of my career. Like, this is it. Like, I'm barely in, and it's going to be over. But he kind of stopped. I mean, in every case, when I said stop, almost every case, it stopped. And so I never really had to go take it anywhere else or do anything more with it. But it was enough. I remember going to a command and being told, like, yeah, the admiral doesn't think women should even be in the Navy. So good luck. And I'm like, well, how am I going to get the number one slot when the admiral doesn't even think women should be in the Navy? But I just worked harder, and it motivated me in some ways to be better, because we were always in the spotlight, right? If you good, bad, or ugly. And I will say, when I was that commanding officer at that base where the guy kissed me, what I did was I challenged everyone in my command to a competition on the physical fitness test. And I did push-up for push-up, because I was so sick of hearing, oh, well, you guys don't have to do as many push-ups, and you get 100 points if you do this many. And I was just like, I'll match you push-up for push-up, sit-up for sit-up, game on. And they got all excited. And I said, the winner will get a soda of their choice. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was just the morale and the fun of it, right? Well, that had kind of come out of my mouth before I actually recognized and remembered, you just had a baby C-section. You haven't done a physical fitness test for a year. Like, you have not done anything for a year. What are you thinking? But I can be very motivated and competitive. And so I began to get up early and worked. I did the physical fitness test twice every morning, every day as we prepped till we had the competition. And when I finally had that day, I'll never forget, we had a guy that was off to go to Buds shortly to become hopefully a Navy SEAL. And he runs over to me and he says, ma'am, I did 126 push-ups. How many did you do? Knowing he's beat me, right? And I turned to the guy counting my push-ups and I said, how many did I do? And he's like, he didn't even answer me. He turns to the guy and goes, she did 127, man, 127. And the guy goes, no fucking way. He goes storming off. He didn't even say anything to me. He just storms off. So in the end, I think I did 136 sit-ups. My swim time, I did the swim instead of the run because I had grown up a swimmer in Arizona. So that was my thing. Anyway, I ended up only having to deliver one soda. And guess what? It was to another woman. She had a better run time than my swim time. So I beat all the guys. And I have to say, it did garner me instant respect. I mean, because physical fitness is something that is an equalizer in some eyes, right? So that helped.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. First of all, you've got bosses, not even bosses, but somebody in uniform on the deck of the ship walking up to you saying, "I'm just saying hello. How am I supposed to communicate that I'm excited for you to be here?" And you just say those words like as one human to another human. Hey, it's very nice to meet you. I'm Adam, and I'm excited that you're here. I don't need to kiss you on the mouth to do that, right? Like that's insane. And so I'm curious, like going through all of that, there had to be some point where you're like, I'm not going to deal with this shit. I'm just going to get out. Did that ever cross your mind, or were you just determined to be your tough self and prove everybody else wrong and stay in because it's what you wanted to do?
It was never something that made me think about getting out. It made me mad. It frustrated me. Um, but I will tell you, the thing that was perhaps the most heartbreaking for me was when I was at Naval Postgraduate School. We were not in uniform, and these were my peers. So I kind of got it when these old men, right? They're 4 generations older. They don't, they've grown up this way. I kind of gave them some leave because it's how they were raised. They don't really get it. They haven't worked with a lot of women yet. They're just not transitioned. They're just not. But when we were at Naval Postgraduate School and we were in uniform and we're in class, and I'm in class with in this case, it was a couple of Marines who were really stating very adamantly women shouldn't be in the military at all. I was heartbroken, and I was just like, wait, you guys are supposed to be my buddies. Like, you're my peers. I don't understand. Like, I had no idea you all thought this way. And I had to prove myself there too. They were really demeaning. I was like one of few. In many times I was the only woman in the class, right? And if I was the only one that got an A, then it was a touchy-feely class. And if I was, called, and of course, unfortunately, there are times when you just kind of want to glide under the radar. And in this case, I would have liked to have, but especially when I was the only one getting an A in the class, because them calling it out just created angst amongst my brethren. But in this instant, there was a class we had there. It was known to be the hardest class of all the classes that we did in our MBA program. It was a multivariate analysis, very hard math class, essentially advanced math. And we had to do a presentation where we dissected an analysis of something that like DARPA or some organization had done. And we had to present our findings of this analysis. And it was interesting because the teacher had used these examples of these little books that you'd read, these studies for years, 20 years, I think. I had tried to get a hold of him before going in and presenting because I found some flawed math in the analysis, but I wasn't confident enough in my own math to be sure, like maybe I'm missing something. But I never got a hold of him. So I go before the class. I'm like the second person to do the presentation. And I am walking through in class that the math is wrong in the study. And that you'll appreciate the study was the difference between training on the job and training in the classroom for the military. And the finding was from the way they did the integral, they had started in two different spots for the calculus. And so the math was wrong. And so I'm walking through this, and this Marine that doesn't think women should be in the Marine Corps at all, or in the military at all, is just very vocal about that's bullshit. I don't believe that. Are you kidding me? Oh, and you think, and this other Marine that was senior to him sort of hit him and told him to shut up and let her talk. So in the meantime, though, I'm watching the instructor very carefully, because I'm like, am I on target here? Am I way off base? His eyebrow raises like, well, I'm very interested to see what you have to say next. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, but now I'm in, right? I'm already in the middle of the presentation. So I continue on and I show the presentation, and it's dead silent when I finish. And clearly the class is waiting, and they're waiting to see what the instructor has to say. And ultimately the instructor says, she's absolutely right. And I've never had anybody catch that. And and then the senior Marine turns to the rest of the class and says, and there's not, he used very colorful words, there's not a damn one of us in this class that would have ever found that. And I just hope I'm not the one doing my presentation next. So anyway, I earned my stripes that day, but it was sort of like, that's the story of every tour I had to do, where there had to be this moment or this thing or this day where I finally, they went, oh, wow, she actually is smart or capable or competent or something.
So they saw you for who you were and what you were capable of, instead of just a woman in the military. And kudos to that senior Marine for standing up. And I'm pretty sure the word he used was fucking, not damn. You're more than welcome to use whatever language you want on the show. This really is about being who you are and true to yourself. And so, I don't understand that. The only time I was on a deployment that we had females with our unit was my Afghanistan deployment, and it was a rough one. It was a really rough one. And she, Jordan Red was her name, I believe, but her and her husband were married, and we had this little aid station, and they lived together. And we were doing, 5-7 day operations, and she would have to go out, and she carried her own. And to my knowledge, nobody treated her differently. In fact, everybody was kind of awestruck that, because she was a little bitty, just tiny, like maybe 5'1", probably barely like 120 pounds. And, when you're going out for 5 days as a medic, you've got all of your stuff, and then you've got all of the medic stuff, because you probably have more medic stuff than you do your stuff, because
right.
that's the most important part,
right.
And then we would get some kind of casualty event, and it was just like a male medic, right? Like, just spring into action, training kicks in, do your job, sometimes better than I think most male medics. And, I never had a problem with it as far as being able to keep up or pull your own weight. I think where I had the problem with it was those people who had the same attitude that were treating you that way. That's what causes the problems in the unit. And I don't even know how to fix that. I don't understand why people are like that. Like, I can't understand how you have this commanding officer taking down the EO picture and then taking it even further, saying all of the things that he wants to do sexually to you. Like, when I was in for 12 and a half years, every month we went through sharp training, every single month without fail. And I think that started right after my first deployment. I mean, there was the biggest thing that was harped on in the Army. And it's like, wait a second, that you're not supposed to be saying this to me. And that I can go and report. I'm the EO. I can file the report right now. And that's sad to me. So enough about that, because clearly you had a very successful career. So obviously you weren't a pilot because you went to 2080. So what did you end up, what was your job description in the Navy? And kind of give us like a really cool highlight reel of what you did and accomplished in the Navy.
Okay. So I ended up being what's called general unrestricted line. And it was this just generic, it ended up being sort of shore-based management. And I started off right out of college in a non-job, right? I was the assistant to the assistant director of training at DAMNEC. at Fleet Combat Training Center Atlantic. And that it was such a non-job that I was bored to tears, and I would ask for work, and I was reading Jane's, the publication that has all this. I was just like so bored. And I went to the commanding officer and I said, please give me a real job, because this is not. And then they did. They actually made me a public affairs officer. I thrived in that and won awards in that, and thought, oh, I want to be a public affairs officer in the military. But somewhere along the way, while my package was in to go do that, they made me the student and quota control officer, which was my first leadership job. I was now a division officer, and I loved that. I got to help not just the students there and making sure, but I had a staff of people. We made really good process decisions, and customers had, I really felt like every sailor has a customer. And so I really emphasized that. So I really enjoyed that as well, and learned a lot. I had a great commanding officer there. I would love to go back and tell him what a difference he made, because I probably will never know. From there, actually, in fact, one of the things I did was I told the Navy in that tour, you're measuring the wrong thing. And he said, you need to go tell the admiral at the, 1-up. And so I told the admiral, you're measuring the wrong thing. Here's what you need to be measuring, and here's why. He's like, you're right. Let's go down to Florida to the 4-star that heads up all of training and tell him that we're measuring the wrong thing. I'm like, okay. So I'm a little baby. I don't even know if I was a JG yet. I think I was still an 01 ensign. And I'm on a plane, and I'm down there, and I'm explaining to them how they're measuring the wrong metric and why they should measure something else. And they're like, wow, you're right. Anyway, that admiral clearly wanted me to be his aide. And I said no. 4 times I said no, because there was just a vibe I got. Just that little vibe that was just like, no. So he then said, well, if you won't come work for me, how would you be interested in doing an internship on the Joint Chiefs of Staff? And at the time, General Colin Powell was the,
I'm so jealous.
Oh my God. He was just amazing. And Secretary Cheney. And I got to be in a very small room with General Colin Powell, doing his thing. Just brilliant, clearly brilliant and adored. And just no one had a bad thing to say about him. I mean, he was just fabulous. So it was a real honor to do that. And also, I would say when I was at Damneck, I wasn't really sure that this was my tribe. I didn't really click with anybody around me. I didn't really feel like they were, I don't know.
They maybe weren't making you feel like part of a team,
I just didn't feel it. So what happened when I went to the Joint Chiefs of Staff was I was placed in a team that was just water walkers. Like everybody in there ended up making a flag. Everybody I was surrounded by made flag, and they were so amazing. And it was just like, wow, okay, this is just really impressive. So I really loved that tour in that it really re-inspired and reinvigorated me. And then I wanted to be in a leadership role, and I wanted a first command. And my only real option of command at that point was to be an officer in charge of a personnel support detachment. And that is sort of the administrative place where they do all of your records, your medical, your training, your advancement exams, your travel, your pay, your, all of that. And there were, my detailer would say, there's just no position available, Darlene, would you like this job? And I'd say, no. She would say, would you like this job? And I've heard, you don't say no to the detailer. And I'm saying no twice now. And I'm like, I'm going to get in hot water for this. But in the meantime, I am picking up the phone and calling every officer in charge in the local area. There were 16 personnel support detachments, and calling all of them and saying, any chance you're leaving early, or any chance that your position is going to open up? And I actually hit one from a woman that I knew who said, I think I'm going to get picked up as a flag aide, and I think I'm going to roll early. And I said, I want your job. and made that happen. So got that job actually with the support of my boss, who was, a heavy hitter in the Pentagon with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and him talking to the detailer and kind of everybody greasing the skids for me, so that I got to go be an officer in charge. And that was a really neat opportunity because, I was 4 years out of college. I had over 50 people working for me. Half of them were military, half of them were civilian. They were ages 18 to 55, and every type of background. So we had every kind of personnel problem you could think of, and we had thousands of customers that were not happy when I showed up. Actually, they were not happy at all, and we had processes, and we had departments, and we had all sorts of issues. So it was like a leadership playground, right? I got to teach the team all about customer service. I got to learn all about what they did. I got to break down barricades and teach process improvements by bringing in experts and having them teach it, and getting the team to actually reorganize how we were set up. Because one of the biggest problems, as you know, especially with pay, would be one department would say, I need this, and go there. And then you'd go there and they'd say, well, no, I needed that. And then something fell through the cracks, and everybody's pointing fingers. And I was like, we're not going to do this. So I had the personnelman and the dispersing officers both take the process from beginning to end for that one customer. It was like a one-stop shop, which meant they had to learn both of their jobs. They sat next to each other so they could talk to each other, but they actually had to take it from beginning to end. And initially, my bosses were not the commanding officer. She was supportive, but the dispersing officer was like, I don't even know that this is legal. And I was like, I think it's okay. Let us give it a try. And so we did that, and it worked so well because they had this new appreciation of what the other person did. They understood why they needed that stuff to begin with. They knew the job from beginning to end. And that customer got had a great experience, right? It got done, and it got done really well. And so we ended up doing a ribbon cutting and a whole revamp. And then the inspector general came in and did this big examination and declared that we were the model personnel support detachment, and all personnel support detachments ought to look like ours. And that was really, really fun, for no other reason than to let that dispersing officer know, see, it's okay. And it's not only okay, it's lauded. So anyway, that was that job. And I loved that. And then got the opportunity to go to Naval Postgraduate School. Was just stunned. A lot of people in my first and second jobs were like, you're shore-based. This is the time you need to go get your master's degree. And I was like, there is no way I'm getting my master's degree at night. God bless all of the people that do this while they work a full-time job and then they do their master's at night. I was not one of those people that wanted to do that or could do that. And so I'm like, if you want me to have my master's, send me to Monterey, California. I'd be happy to do that. So they did. And that was just a great opportunity. We talked a little bit about that. I do have a funny story that one of my friends sat me down and said, this is not the place you ace, Darlene. This is the place where you try to get by with just C's or D's. Just graduate and improve your golf game. And so I went in there kind of like, okay, how do you study just enough for an exam where you're going to pass it, but it's enough? And I never could figure that out. So I ended up being on the honor roll and getting awards and stuff for that. Night golf games still sucked when I left. And unfortunately, I didn't follow that guidance very well.
Just doing what you knew how to do, right?
Yeah.
And it's really cool that you speak to, you wanted to be a leader, so you get this opportunity to go to the personnel shop. Well, we call it S1 in the Army. I don't know if it's the same in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so and you immediately see all these problems, and you're just like, I don't care how it's running. I see it can run better, and we're going to do it this way. And I know from experience, I got stuck in the training room towards the end of my career from injuries, from deployments and all of that. So I learned a lot of the behind the scenes of what you're talking about. It's an inefficient process. It's truly inefficient. And I forget what the DA form is, but it's like a hand receipt for paperwork. And even that whole process, it doesn't do anything for you. It just creates more work for you. So it's for me, it's really cool to see what you instituted, because I have a good recollection of what that process was like. And, take it to this person first, and then, well, you don't have everything you need because you didn't see this person, and they have to give you their piece of it. And it's like, why? Like, you guys really do sit next to each other. You can't take care of this right now. So, like, really, it sounds like you use common sense. And the military doesn't like common sense. It's at least in my experience. I don't know if it was for you on the higher officer side, but it really seems, particularly on the officer side, they don't like common sense.
I will tell you, my number two civilian, there were times in my first commanding officer, I would get, a little snippy with me, and I turned to my assistant officer in charge and say, what did I do? And she said to me, you had a good idea. It wasn't their idea, and it's going to be a great idea. And you stepped outside of, your prescribed line, essentially. And I had that commanding officer wasn't long for that world. Fortunately, a new one came in who was very supportive and gave me a lot of leash, a lot of room to do what I needed to do. And I looked around at that tour of duty and said, okay, who's number one of all of the officers in charge? What are they doing? Look, like, copy them, right? And what I noticed was they were really good at communicating up all of their achievements. They did an every other week newsletter. It was specifically for the skipper. It had her or his interests, and it was just, really good. And I was like, okay, I need to do that. Because it was one thing to do these great things. It's another if nobody knows what's happening or why or the results. And we did something. We came in with some of the worst statistics, and we were like, I'm like, we're putting our statistics on the wall. So if it's bad, it's showing to everyone, including our customers. If it's good, you can brag about it and you can see it. So how quickly are you turning around a travel claim? It's going on the wall. And I mean, we went from, I think you had to have it done in 10 days. We were at 3 days because it was on the wall, right? And so when a customer would complain about the travel claim, I'm like, these are our statistics. Maybe you need to check with your admin. Maybe it's been sitting in there a week, and that's in fact what would be the case. So
yeah, I've been out for a decade, and I think I'm still waiting on a travel claim to get processed. So, I was against government travel cards and all that, because I watched so many soldiers get in trouble with that, because, like we talked about, it's such an inefficient process. And, now soldiers' credit scores are tanking. They've got these bills that are piling up because the Army can't get their shit together and put in the paperwork. 10 days, I would have loved it if it was 10 days. I think on average it was like 45 to 60 days for us, which is, 60 days as, a young sergeant or specialist who has to go TDY to a school somewhere. They don't have the disposable income to pay for that. And so you use the government travel card, and before you know it, it's not getting paid off because the systems are not great. And now they're in a whole lot more financial trouble. Now First Sergeant's barking down my ass because why does your Joe have financial problems? And it's like, well, First Sergeant, we created these problems for him. You know what I mean? And yeah, I love that you actually got a good commander who understood what you were trying to do and let you do what you needed to do. But I also like how you held your unit accountable, right? We're going to face this. These are the statistics and they don't lie, right? So if you don't like looking at that, it's up to you to change it. And I think that's so important, especially as we move forward in the conversation and start talking about the transition in entrepreneurship, because until you actually face those things, nothing will improve.
Well, and I'll tell you, I learned a lot in my first few leadership tours, even just about communication, about communicating with men and women and the differences there. And in this particular tour, I had two chiefs, Navy senior chiefs, right? They were salty, and they did not particularly like this young female. At this point, I think I was a lieutenant. And they didn't like the fact that, I was in charge. And so what became very clear to me was that I needed to really just say, this is what I need done. You guys figure out how to do it. Because if I said, here's how I think you should do it, then they would, honestly, I think they would have made it fail. And even when they start down the path of a way that I thought, like, that's never going to work, we're getting ready for a service record examination or something, and there's 1 or 2, 3 approaches that you could take to get prepared. And I'm looking at what they're doing. I'm thinking, but you know what? They'll make it successful if I leave them to it and don't tell them how to do it. Just check in regularly, see how it's going. Ultimately, they started one way, decided it wasn't working, flipped it, ended up a different way, the way I would have recommended, but didn't say anything. And then they finished it and they were successful. So, there was a lot to learn through the process of being, honestly, tiptoeing around egos. I did a lot of tiptoeing around egos in the Navy, and probably was better off for it. Did enjoy very much taking care of my people. But I will tell you, when I left that tour, I was ready to just be responsible for myself again. Like, okay, I'm, just me getting to school and doing homework. Yes, sign me up for Naval Postgraduate School. That's great right now.
Right. So given all of the adversity you were facing with, command and peers and the pushback and the inappropriateness, and just really, you said starting at a -10 just to get back to 0 before you could really shine. Did you have anybody who was not like that to mentor you, that actually kind of looked to help you, or did that not come until maybe later or at all? Because when I talked to Alex, she was in a place, I think self-admittedly, that she wasn't willing to see what was in front of her, basically because she was so angry with what was being done and had happened to her. And, now looking, back at it, she wishes she would have accepted, kind of some of that guidance and whatnot. And so I really am curious, because I don't have experience with it. I can't imagine that your entire career, you felt like you didn't have anybody. I feel like there had to have been some good leaders that came along at some point and really did help you out and have your best interests at heart.
I really did love the commanding officer that was over me at some point in that tour. And it was a woman, and she was just a fabulous human being. She was very supportive. I wouldn't say she was my mentor, but she was a supportive commanding officer, very supportive of my endeavors, initiatives, encouraging, enthusiastic. She was the first time in my entire Navy career I could look up and say, oh, yay, a role model, right? Somebody that I can, and even at that point, there wasn't one that was married and had kids anywhere. So, you're trying to chart your own path this way. And then I think later in my career, at the end of my career, I had a mentor, I would say a mentor guy, but that turned sideways because then he wanted more than that. And when I cut that off, that ended up actually having negative consequences, where he kind of took some action to try to get me into trouble. So it was really very awkward. So no, I really don't think I had mentors. I think I had my dad as a great role model, and I could ask him some questions along the way. But I would encourage people to have mentors. If you can find mentors, I think that they're fabulous. And I would have loved to have had anyone that I could talk to about any of these things, but I really didn't.
I mean, I think it's important to point, there are good people out there that will mentor you, and it will not turn into something where I want more or whatever, right? Like the whole point of this show is to genuinely help everybody. And I'm grateful that you're here to tell this story. This is not an exclusively a male show, and until I did Alex's interview and now you, and then I've finally got some more, but I was having trouble. Like, they would book meetings, but they wouldn't actually show up to the meeting to talk about what the podcast is about. And I would reach out. And so I was like asking Alex, like, hey, what can I do to be better, to make myself more approachable, so that, cause I know this is going on, right? I've seen it in my career. I've heard the stories, and I don't think it's right. And I don't think it's fair at all. And you guys shouldn't have to do that. You should be respected and given the opportunity to excel. And, it makes me think, like, hearing your stories. My sister just got out of the Air Force as a major. She had a golden ticket to be a flag officer if she wanted to. She accomplished everything she possibly could and more in the Air Force. And she doesn't talk to me about what she experienced in the Air Force. And I think it's I don't know, it may be complicated because I kind of paved the way for her to join the Air Force. I'm 5 years older than she is. And when she pinned major, I was at the ceremony, and I remember her CO, thanking me for being there because I didn't realize how much she looked up to me and what I was doing in the military. And I think she might not have come to me with some of that stuff because she didn't kind of want to associate that, like, I'm a little bit responsible for you joining the military, and I'm in this situation now, which would have, maybe caused guilt or something on me. However, I would have worked through that with her and, like, given her suggestions, kind of like your father, I assume, did for you. Confide in him, and so I really am kind of curious now if maybe that's, if she had the same experience throughout her Air Force career, and that's why she never really talked about it or whatever. But that's not the case. If I was still active duty, and I would be a mentor to anybody, and in the right way, because I just want to see people succeed and reach their full potential. And so let's talk about it. So you get to 20 years, it's time to retire. What is going through your mind, right? So 20 years is a long time. I only made it to 12 and a half before I was medically retired. And particularly all the combat, for me, it was the element of wanting, I was more comfortable deployed than I ever was at home, ever. War is simple. It's kill or be killed. And that's pretty much the rules. So that's like all you have to focus on. And so getting out after 12 and a half years, you know how it goes, particularly for combat arms guys, is straight to the bottom of a bottle, a lot of times drugs, and then usually ends up in putting a gun in your mouth because you just can't deal with it anymore. So talk about your transition. What are you feeling when it's time to retire, and how are you approaching this? Do I think sometimes, and this may be a misconception, but I think officers have more opportunity than enlisted when they're getting out, just because you have a degree typically. And for 12 and a half years, I had never had time to get a degree. I tried one time and I had to go right back to my commander, like, hey, you're sending me to NTC. You just signed my college paperwork. Now I need you to sign the paperwork so that I can drop these classes and not have to pay for them, because there's no way to do that. And, I have a cousin who got out as a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and he walked right into a corporate job at IBM paying ridiculous money. I didn't have any of those opportunities because my skills were, I can kick doors in and I can shoot people in the face, right? Those don't translate to the civilian world very well. So talk to us about the transition for you, and, like, what were your options, and then kind of leading into what inspired you to become an entrepreneur.
Well, so I would say I would start with this. Every tour of duty that I had in the Navy for, I would say, the first 15 years, I would question, can I do this? And I mean, oh my gosh, they're putting me in charge. My last one, I was in charge of 1,200 people, right? 1,200 people, can I do this? And I finally, at the end of my career, I was like, hell yeah, I can do this. I can do anything you throw at me. But it took a long time before, and because in each case, I'm like, I don't know the language. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm in charge, right? That's how it felt. And over time, I felt like I could. It was in my last tour of duty that I built that Returning Warrior Weekend program that was really born out of my own PTSD, trauma, and issues that I'd faced going through a divorce and an ex and protecting my children. And I would say that I don't think I would have even noticed those issues in other people if I hadn't experienced my own trauma and knew what it looked like and knew what it felt like and cared enough to try to help other people through it. So I had then had this opportunity to do something so incredibly intrinsically rewarding. And I always found leadership to be incredibly intrinsically rewarding, but the Returning Warrior Weekend program took that on. And, that was just more than anything. You have people saying, you saved my life, you saved my marriage, this program, which is still in existence today, right? It was just really phenomenal. So getting out, I hear what you're saying, but I will tell you, I shot resumes all over the place and got nothing back. Like I was, I could put together this really remarkable accomplishment resume, but it wasn't, nothing was coming back. And I would get told, like, well, what what industry do you want to work in? And I'd be like, I can work in any industry. I mean, I worked in all of these different industries in the Navy, right? So, whatever. No, you have to pick an industry. And I'm like, well, why do I have to pick an industry? I can lead in any industry. And so it was sort of luck that I had a technology boss who saw my resume and saw leadership like all over it and said, I want a leader. I need a leader in this technology space. Now, I had technologists work for me, right? I had an IT shop under me, but I couldn't tell you the difference between a router and a switch at the time. So
Right.
I had people do this, but, I don't know. But I got hired into this job. The problem, and so the good part of it was I knew exactly what to do in taking care of my team, in improving processes and improving customer service. So operationally, I knew exactly what to do. The thing that was hard for me was when that boss that hired me, who appreciated leadership, who wanted to take care of people, who had the same value system I had, when they left and somebody else came in, somebody who didn't care about leadership, who didn't understand leadership, who actually my previous boss had said, would you please mentor him because he needs your help? And he refused. So I found I was now working for somebody that did not care about people, who only cared about profit. And, I've grown up in the Navy, right? I don't care about profit. I never cared about profit will come, as I've heard you say, when you do all the right things and you take care of people. So it was really hard. And I actually was very upset going to work every day for this person until someone said, you could quit. Like, it never even dawned on me I could quit. You know how in the military you don't quit? Like,
you don't get an option.
You're
showing up for work.
Someone's going to roll. You'll just get through it, right? So it was just this. I could quit. Like, well, that's a really interesting thought. I really could quit. So I actually said, I'm going to quit. And then they said, well, wait, don't quit. We want, what would you like to do? We'll find a position for you. And I said, I want to lead a team. I want to take care of customers and we need your leadership. Please don't leave. So they rolled me into a new job, which was a mess. My goodness, that was telecommunication expense management, which I knew nothing about, but I can learn, right? So we worked all that and we were making great strides. They reorganized and they put that same guy back in charge of me again. I lasted like 1 week under him again. And I was like, no, I'm out again. I'm out. So I got out that time from that job because I just couldn't handle not working in a culture or for someone whose values and my values aligned. And I will say that in spite of all the things I ever went through in the military, we were always aligned in our values, right? We were always one mission. We're going to figure it out. We have a strong work ethic. We take care of people, but we also hold people accountable. That was the other thing that was just really unique to me in the civilian world. Like, nobody holding anybody accountable, nobody actually caring for people. It was real easy to walk into technology and be a good leader in technology because they'd never seen a leader. I mean, they didn't even know what it looked like.
Yeah. And I can relate to that. I remember, getting out and just going to flight school with, just college age kids. And I was like, wow, like no accountability whatsoever. And I discovered that when I had come back from like an instrument flight one day. So this is pretty far along into my journey of becoming a pilot. But one of the people from my cohort, we were sitting in the ops room I used to go up there. I would have class, ground school in the morning, and then I would have to sit around for an hour or two, wait for a flight. And then just the thing to do and the way you learn is to just sit in the ops room all day and study with other people who are behind you, people who are ahead of you. It's just kind of what it was like. And I was sitting at this table and I was going over some instrument procedures, and instrument flying for me was the hardest. It was the hardest to learn, the hardest to comprehend, the hardest to really visualize. And so I was really like chair flying in the ops room. And I know that sounds crazy, but it happens a lot. And this one person from my cohort, was bitching about not having enough money to pay for their flight that day or whatever. And I was like, hey, it's not that big a deal. I can loan you the money to pay for the flight so that you can, stay proficient or whatever. She's like, oh, well, it must be nice to have cash because you're not paying for flight school. And I was just like, I don't think you understand what I gave up to get a GI Bill to come here and go to flight school. And, meanwhile, her dad was paying for flight school. And I'm like, nobody's paying for this but me. And I actually paid for this with blood, sweat, and tears.
That's exactly right.
And so I agree with what you're saying there. I think that's part of something that leads to like our loss of purpose and mission when we do transition is like, at least in the military, you're held accountable, period. It's not an option. It's like you said, you didn't want to go to work. I just did another interview with Sergeant Major Berna, and he, towards the end of his time with the asymmetric warfare group, he would say, I was taking 45-minute showers staring at the uniform like, I don't want to put this on, but it's not an option. I don't have a choice. I have to put this on. And so, like that really does contribute to a spiral. At least it did for me, because I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't know how to put that out of my mind. I'm used to being able, as a staff sergeant, to tell Joe, like, hey, I'm holding you accountable for this and you're going to do this. And now, all these people are pawning it off on everybody else. Like, how do you actually deal with that? And it's such a tough situation. So you're working this job, you're going to quit, and they create a position for you, or
we found one that was in need of a leader. Yeah. And I will add this to you, Adam. I only got out because I went through a divorce and my kids needed that stability. I had been deep selected for promotion a year ahead of my contemporaries. So I was on a fast track, and they were like, you're going to definitely make captain and all of it. But I knew that my next job was going to be the kind of job that I would be gone the kids needed stability. I needed to be where I had support from my family. I had never been anywhere ever where I had support from my family, and I needed them to be kind of close to family. So it was hard for me to get out, but also, and all of my career, I was like trying to be number one, trying to get promoted, trying to do all the right things. Right. And now you just like throw yourself off the tracks. You just eject, right? It was just heartbreaking. And now I'm in this job and I don't really like it. And I quit, and I did quit the second time. And I will tell you the funniest thing is what happened next. And there was a job opening at McAfee, the company now purchased by Intel, but sort of famous for the crazy McAfee.
The virus software, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was a vice president position, and this is now software, right? I've not done any software. I get an interview with the HR, and the HR lady walks me through some very basic questions. Do you have 15 years of architectural engineering? No. Do you have a CRM SaaS background? No. Do you have, she walks through all these questions. No, 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 no. I'm like, what is this job that I, was told would be a perfect fit for me? Because that's what somebody had said, you would be perfect for this job. And I'm like, what are they thinking? This doesn't sound like a job for me at all. And we get to the final question, and she says, well, I see here that you live in Arizona. Would you move to Plano, Texas, or would you move to Santa Clara, California? And I said, oh, I'm not moving. I'm not moving. My parents finally moved out of Alaska. They're right around the corner. I need my kids to have these grandparents around them for the first time. No, I'm not moving. I could do this remotely, and I can travel to and from very well. And she's just like, she's punching out now. She's like, Darlene, you have a very impressive resume, but see ya, right? She's like, you're not a good fit for this. Well, 2 weeks later, I'm serious. That had to have been the worst interview on the planet ever. And I get a call back 2 weeks later, same woman, saying the CIO is insisting on interviewing you. And I told him that you're not moving and that you don't have, and she's like, I've already, just so you know, I've told him you're terrible at this. Anyway, I finally do get an interview with him. And at this point, I have some insider information around what they're really needing, even though that's not what the job description says, what their vulnerabilities or their issues kind of are. And really, I formulated my discussion of my career path in a way that married up with what their issues were. Story with here's how I found it, here's what I did, and here were the results, right? Situation, action, results. And went through the interview. And at the end of the interview, he said, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "How do you see me as a fit for this job?" And he said, he's almost like talking to himself. You can almost hear him like looking up at the ceiling. He's like, when I look at your resume, I really didn't see it. I wasn't sure, but having talked with you, I realized my problems are not architecture. My problems are communication, customer service, process, leadership, like all the things you're really good at. And I'd like you to continue to interview. And so in the end, after one day I think I had 10 interviews in a day, and I flew here and I flew there and I flew everywhere to go do interviews with people. And I was up against somebody who was local to Santa Clara, had another vice president's endorsement, had the whole 15 years of architectural engineering background. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to ever get this job. But I ended up getting the job, and I ended up being able to do it remotely. And even at the final interview, the chief financial officer is saying, "Tell me again how you're going to do this how are you?" And I said, "Because I am just that good." Like, I am such a good communicator that I will be better at it from somebody sitting next to the person. Like, I will travel to and from, and I won't fail. Like, I don't fail at things. I'm going to do the best job you've ever seen. So I got hired, and the CIO cited me as the best leader out of 350 worldwide leaders, and that it was the best hiring decision he had ever made. And I really enjoyed that job. But I will have to tell you, I didn't have any background in software. I just didn't, but I didn't need it. And that was all military. That was just being able to be, I've heard you talk about adaptability, flexibility, able to think on your feet, jumping in, just doing it, figuring it out, right? All the things that you've talked about.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you speak on it because to the audience it might get old hearing me say it over and over and over, week in and week out, but I'm at living proof. 10 months ago I had nothing. I had 92 followers on LinkedIn. I'm over almost 1900 right now. I'm building this podcast. I'm getting it in front of an audience who really needs to hear these things. And the only reason I'm able to do that is because I stopped trying to figure it all out and just started taking the action. And I really do believe, and I think you're proving my point even further. The military gives us high leverage skills, leadership being probably the number one. But to be a good leader, you have to have that resiliency, that problem solving ability, that flexibility, that adaptability, right? The discipline. Those are all the things that make up a good leader. And how can you do it remotely, was his question to you. And it's like, because I'm that good, because I understand what it, all these things encompass being a good leader. And being a good leader is understanding that all of those things have to work together. And then you push that down in a gentle way on your team, right? And I'm so glad to hear somebody else articulate it in such a powerful way, because it really is true. And we're all capable of it. We're all capable of it if we just would get out of our own ways and believe in ourselves. And I'm guilty. I'm sure you're guilty at times of not giving yourself the credit that you deserve, or the, believing in yourself enough, or thinking that you're capable of it. These are the human condition. This is what we all go through, but it's how you respond to those undisciplined thoughts and feelings that really makes the difference. And so when did you decide that, this tech, I forget what you called it because I've never heard of it either, but this new job that you're in, at what point did you go full steam ahead on Returning Warrior Weekend? And is that before or after the stem cell stuff starts? And like, can you like paint that picture for us? Because you have a really interesting story, and I'm excited to talk about the stem cell stuff because I'm really into the holistic stuff.
Well, the Returning Warrior Weekend thing was my last tour in the Navy, and I share that only in that it was my glimpse into that intrinsic reward that was just unparalleled. And so I get out. I'm now doing, VP of McAfee. I mean, it's a really cushy job. I'm making a lot of money. I'm doing all this stuff, and we then roll over to Culver, Indiana. I quit. We go to Culver, Indiana, because my daughters want to go to this boarding school that's really prestigious, and I'm not going to leave my kids at high school. Like, no, I'm just moving there with you. I'll be right there. We'll just do this together. I don't know what my job is going to be. I really moved. You talk about like throwing yourself off the track. I was at the pinnacle of my career, and I'm just going to move to a tiny town of 1,200 and have no idea what I'm going to do for a job, because my kids want to do this. And there were a lot of teary nights over this. Tell me again how great this school is. Like, really? And I ended up being the dean of their boarding school, actually, because it's a leadership school, and I can be the dean of a boarding school, because why not, right? Anyway, did that for a little while, back to consulting. Stayed in the technology consulting arena, director of client services for a technology network and security company. And then what happened is this. My husband, at age 64, 63, 64, was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's. And that came out of nowhere, right? Now I had become a hobbyist in the holistic space, because part of what my exes gifted me with were autoimmune disorders from the trauma and the PTSD and everything that I went through. I had chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia. So I had been really immersed into holistic medicine, because there's nothing any of the Western medicine can do for any of those things. They just sort of throw drugs at it, and nothing really fixes. So eating healthy, exercising, meditating, doing all the things you can for self-care. But this was a whole new ballgame, right? Early Alzheimer's. Wow. What do you do for that? And diving in and researching. I mean, I'm good at researching. I can work. I will look this up. I will figure this out. And everything pointed to stem cells. But we don't do that here in the United States. So we had to go out of country. And we did. We went out of country 4 times quarterly for a year to get placenta stem cells. And that did nothing. It was, first of all, super expensive, $10,000 each time we went. And both, he got them, but I got them too, because I'm like, maybe this can solve my autoimmune system issues. We did gene mapping, we did microbiome testing and intervention, we did infrared sauna, we did hyperbaric chamber, we did ozone therapy, hydrogen water. We followed the Dr. Bredesen protocol with strength training and supplements and sleep protocol. And I mean, you name it, we did it. And guess what? Nothing made a difference. My husband's Alzheimer's declined. In 2 years, he declined what normally would have taken 13 years. And to the point where he's age 5 cognitively and unable to dress himself properly. And at this point, like, doesn't necessarily know how to take a pill. Like, you have to actually say, put it in your mouth and now drink to swallow it. Or sometimes he'll spit it back out, or it's just not pretty. The place that we were in at the time a year ago he was sleeping the entire day away. I had lost him. He was no longer engaging in conversation. It was just too hard to talk. I think he just found it exhausting. And he just, part of his personality is to be funny. He is very funny. One-line zingers, just really, always wants to make people laugh. It's just a huge part of who he is. And he was not even trying to make people laugh anymore. So I'd lost him. I'd really lost him. Oh, and he would ask me the same question like 7 times in 2 minutes. It was just trying every fiber of my being.
So what kind of toll is this taking on you?
Yeah, well, that's a very valid question. I was sort of doing okay until I missed the last 3 steps of our house and broke my foot and sprained my ankle. And that immediately removed my coping mechanisms, which were walks around the neighborhood, pickleball with friends, activities, socialization, just, getting out and about. And all of a sudden that went away. And the result of that was, quite honestly, depression. I went into a depression where I just wanted to cry every single day. And I also was now face to face with how bad it was. So before I was injured and immobilized, I would do everything without thinking about it. You need water, I make water, right? I need water, I make myself a water. When I had to try to talk him through making me an ice water, and it was a 15-minute ordeal, and it was really hard for him, even to start with where the cups are, and then to put the ice in, and then to get the water. It was just like, oh my gosh. So everything was so hard, and it was just face to face with how bad this really was. And it was the first time I thought, wow, we are really here. I mean, this is really awful. I had a friend at that point in time who said, Darlene, I know that you understand the power of stem cells. I've been working with a technology that has changed my family's life. My cousin, who had cancer, leukemia, end-stage vet, Agent Orange vet. My daughter, autistic, rare genetic disorder. Just amazing success stories. Give it a try. It's going to activate your own stem cells. And I'm like, oh, right. Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Well, because at this point you're already $80,000 invested into stem cells with you and your husband, right? You're in this depression because I can only. So my wife's grandmother has dementia and it's getting worse, and so I get a little of an experience with the memory issues, but I can imagine that talking your husband, the man that you married and that you love, through making you a glass of water while you're so frustrated because this is something that is so basic, but at the same time, you're angry with yourself for being frustrated with him because his mind is at a 5-year-old level and there's nothing he can do about it, right? So you're in this just loop of like, well, I'm tired, exhausted, depressed. I don't have my outlets anymore. Now I'm frustrated. Now I'm angry. I'm probably lashing out at him and I don't mean to. And so that makes me more mad at myself, right? And it's a similar circle. I went through the same circle with depression, anger, survivor's guilt, whatever, all the things. It's across the board. I think we all experience this through some mechanism or another. I don't think any of us are immune to it, and it's how we respond and deal with it. And so thank you for sharing that with us, because I do think it's important to paint that picture. And we're also talking to hard charger Darlene here, right? Like, you're the best at
Right. I
everything
want to
that you've
fix
done.
this. I can fix this. There's a way to fix this. I'm sure and then I'm not finding a way to fix this, right? And I'm just watching his decline get worse and worse, and now I'm struggling with my own health, my own depression, my own, I had headaches. I'm emotionally eating. I'm unable to lose weight because it's, I'm 59 and I'm hormonal and I'm menopause and all of these things, right? So I'm just like, this just really sucks. And so when she came in and said, I've got a little patch, it's the size of a quarter and you wear this and it activates your stem cells and it will change your life. I was like, okay, bring it on. I'll try it. I didn't even research it, Adam. I was just like, I don't care. Let's try. You heard all the things I had already tried. Like, I had tried at very high expense everything that was out there. So I was like, okay, I'll try that. If it only needs to work for one person, from my perspective, it doesn't need. But then I actually did find there are 90 clinical studies, double-blind, placebo-controlled, patents. Over 300 Olympic athletes had been wearing them. Tom Brady, the Kansas City Chief, Michael Phelps, Serena Williams, David Beckham, lots of people wearing these patches. I didn't know that at the time, didn't really care. It was just like, sure, I'll try it. Let's give it a shot. And from the first day wearing these patches, he didn't do that 3.5-hour nap. He didn't fall asleep at night. He engaged in conversation in a way that I hadn't seen him engage in a year. Like, he was chatty and funny and back to his personality. And I was just like floored, all in the first week. In the first week, I was just like, what is going on? And on top of that, his blood pressure drops 30 points in 2 weeks. His sense of smell ends up coming back after being gone 15 years ago. There are all these things. His hair starts crying. And I get the amazing immediate benefit of out of pain, because there's patches that take you out of pain, which are there's no drugs in any of this. There's one of the things I love about this is it can be used for active duty military. There's no pharmaceutical. People who are having trouble with addictions or alcohol or drugs and need pain relief, this is better than morphine. I can, when my mom just came out of heart surgery and they, did everything they could to take her from 20 out of 10 pain down to 8, and that's the best they can do, right? Because there's no more morphine to be given. And I put these pain relief patches on her and I drop her to a 0 in a minute, and then she never asks for a Tylenol again. It's just like, that's what happened to my foot. Like, all of a sudden I'm out of pain for the first time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really wonderful. And my depression lifted in a couple of weeks. My energy was off the charts. My sleep improved. My husband's sleep improved. It was just so remarkable. And so the first thing that happens to me is I'm like, Mom, Dad, Sis, you guys need to do this. Like, right? You have got to try this. This is the most remarkable thing I've ever experienced. My sister's 6 years of microscopic colitis clears up in 3 weeks. Her plantar fasciitis goes away. My parents get sturdier and stronger, not the fall risk that they were before.
Sign me
all,
up. Where do I get
all
this?
sorts
Because I need it.
Oh, the thing that's so cool about it is that it helps people. You actually can look at the studies even on my website. There's a brain study that I love. In this brain study, you actually can see a picture of red inflammation, which is actually like hypercoherence, a poor communicating brain. It's ADHD, it's PTSD, it's anger. And in just 3 weeks on the stem cell activation patch, the picture changes. You can see the color mapping change. People reporting a dramatic reduction in their anxiety, an improvement in their nervous system, but you can actually see the decrease in the inflammation. And then in the 6-week point, people have improved memory, improved focus, better cognition. I mean, just really remarkable. So there are some amazing studies. Oh, and I love the heart study. So this is, I think, what changed my life from a perspective of the POTS. So POTS caused me to pass out. They were giving me a blood pressure medicine to increase my blood pressure. Now, I don't know how other people feel about that, but that just seemed like a really bad idea to me. I just think you're messing. I just think pharmaceuticals mess in a world that they do not understand, and they try to do one thing and they end up with all these other things that they do. The side effects can be worse than what they're treating. So
Yeah, I get weird when I hear those commercials, and it's like, I don't want to take a fucking pill that's going to make my rectally bleed, right? Like, that doesn't sound great to cure something that is really just kind of, really just more of a bother than anything else. And I love that you're talking about this, because my holistic healing journey started, I mean, really started in July of last year when I got to go to Peru to do ayahuasca. So that's what really turned me on to all the alternative medicine. But it probably started earlier than that, in the fact that I watched all of my buddies go to the VA to get prescribed 25 different pills, and taking these pills and just being zombies. They're shells of the people, much like I can imagine your husband was on, at his lowest point, right? And it's awful. And even the pills aren't working, because I found one of my very best friends hanging from a balcony. You know what I mean? And like, and that's, I knew that was a route I never wanted to go down. But again, I would spend another few years before I would actually find something and pursue something, first of all, that I thought was a little bit woo-woo or out there, because I'm a dare kid, right? So just say no to drugs, right? And that includes,
when you're growing up in the military, you don't do any of these things, right? Or if you do, they're very illegal, right? So
yeah, yeah. And so, I heard you mentioned hyperbaric oxygen therapy and red light therapy. And did you say anything about like sauna and cold
I did.
plunge, right?
We have an infrared sauna, and we did a red light therapy and hydrogen water, even psilocybin mushrooms. Adam, we started on those at the beginning of this year, in an effort, honestly, to keep him off of some of these harder drugs. Um, it ended up that we did have to put him on some anti-delusion medicines and some things. All of the things that improved for him stayed improved, but other things have continued to decline. So I want to make it clear, this is not cured my husband's Alzheimer's, right? It's kept him at a high quality of life. It's kept him with me with his personality, with his energy, and some things have got, like, he did regain the ability to whistle and drum and smell, and some other.
Did his one-liners come
His
back?
one-liners are back. So
There you go, right? So you have your
I
husband
have my
back, and
husband back.
that's
Just is
and that's
5.
so. With all of those other therapies, do you advocate for those? Because I have experienced a ton of benefits, clearly from the ayahuasca, but red light therapy. My mother-in-law actually for Christmas bought me a nice red light therapy, really expensive, way more expensive than I deserve. But when I am consistent with it, and I will preface this with saying I have to be consistent with it, but when I use it consistently, oh boy, do I notice a difference, right? Same thing with, I microdose mushrooms as well. 2 days on, 1 days off. I get it from a place called Flow Dose Maui. It really is psilocybin mushroom. So one psilocybin mushroom pill, 200 milligrams with another 100 milligrams of lion's mane at the same time. It's amazing the I guess clarity that I get out of it, and just no more brain fog, no more dealing.
Niacin, and do you stack it with niacin?
I don't. That's been recommended to
Right?
me. So
Lion's mane, psilocybin, and niacin are the stack.
yeah, I'm going to have to do that. So do you still advocate for those types of therapies?
I think that they're very valuable. I think all of them are very valuable. I will tell you, I have not personally experienced anything I could notice from doing any of them, but I do think that they are valuable. And I think that, I mean, I've done enough of the research to know the research is very sound on all of those. I think the world of ozone therapy, we have an ozone machine here. you know, I, I think people underestimate the power of sleep. We've done a lot to try to improve our sleep. Red lights, like on a Navy ship, in our bathroom. So at nighttime, we're only putting on red lights. We lower all the lights, and we don't. I have red light blocking glasses for nighttime, and we get our eyes on the morning sun, and we stop eating 3 hours before bed, and stay consistent. All the things that you can do, because that deep sleep is so critical. And he was only getting 15 minutes. In spite of all of those efforts, he was getting 15 minutes of deep sleep. And in the second week, he got an hour and 20 minutes. And I was just like,
Right. Yeah. No, for sure.
But also happy, our hair, my hair was sort of falling out. He had a big bald spot, his hair started coming back. My hair started growing in really thick. And I had actually sprouts like all over the place. They were unruly and standing on the top of my head. And so, yeah, I do think all of those things are really very helpful. But I will tell you, they didn't help me. But I will say this: when I started patching, one of the studies I was going to tell you about for the it's a vascular system study. It improved the study participants' vascular system in 6 weeks. What was really impressive to me is that in just 6 weeks, the cardiovascular system began functioning as if it were 8 weeks younger. And I think that is why I haven't had to take this medicine to raise my blood pressure. I haven't had a fainting episode. I am playing pickleball in Arizona in the summer, which I could not do before patching at all. I would just pass out. I'd black out, and I would be down for the count. I'd just overheat, and that would be it. I couldn't do a squat. I'm now so much stronger. I'm really proud of my muscles, and I'm recovering faster. And that's one of the things that people see is this recovery. There's benefits that include things like anti-cancer. It actually resets the programmed cell death of cancer cells, and it doesn't damage healthy cells. I mean, there's just everything from nerve, brain, heart health, lungs, skin, hair, energy. I love the energy. I am such a better care provider now, and patient and calm and easier going and less anxious. And, all of it, I don't think I could have survived this year without him. Like, I feel like I would have just,
That's awesome. It's so good, and I love hearing it because though my journey is very different, I have not had the opportunity to try stem cells. However, we're going to talk after we record this because I am extremely interested. I had a back surgery in January. It did help, but I'm still left with more pain than I would like to be in. And, having heard you mention that, but, my journey from doing the ayahuasca to showing me the top of the mountain and the work that I need to do and what I'm capable of, I've lost 92 pounds in 10 months. My blood pressure, I understand what you're saying. I agree with you. I don't ever want to be put on any type of blood pressure medicine because it's a gamble, but, my blood pressure is down. I'm no longer pre-diabetic. All of my blood work is basically, I just turned 39 and all of my blood work shows that I'm 35, 34, 35 years old, right? I'm interested in this because, doing my own research and really kind of trying to biohack. Essentially, I want to live a longer life so I can help more people and be a better human than I was in the past. And one of the things that I'm glad you touched on is the cardiovascular health, because VO2 max is directly tied to how long you're going to live, right? One of the two of the biggest things, grip strength and VO2 max. And so for the last 10 months I've been focused on bringing up my VO2 max. I think I'm up 15 points on my own, and really all I've done is watch what I put in my body and walk a lot. I walk a lot.
well, your point is around, I mean, it's cellular dysfunction, right? Our mitochondria are dysfunctional. And when we can get our cells functional and working properly, for our bodies have an innate wisdom and they know how to heal. And it doesn't have to be a drug doing it. It's your own body elevating your own peptides, just like when you go out in the sun and your body makes vitamin D. Nobody's telling your body, no one's injecting you with vitamin D. Some people do oral supplements. Some people question whether that's actually very valuable at all. But at least when you go in the sun, your body makes vitamin D or melanin for a suntan. That's how this works. You have light inside of you. I don't have to tell any military person, who's ever looked in night vision goggles that you have light inside of you. This little patch is just reflecting your own light back at a very specific wavelength, causing a biochemical response. It's just amazing. And people that have had 4 bulging discs over a 16-year period have found their spine straightens out and their bulging discs are better and they're out of pain. There's just nothing that I've seen. There's nothing that I have seen that your stem cells can't fix. They made you, right? They're the body's raw materials. 2 stem cells came together. They can become brain, heart, lungs, tissue, anything that they want. So it's really amazing to improve that cellular health, rejuvenating and regenerating your own mitochondria to get your cells functional again so that you are out of pain. So getting to the root cause, which is all what holistic is all about, right? Is really nothing in Western medicine looks at root cause of anything. It's all like, let's try to mask that pain with some kind of drug. And what these do is they get into the root cause of what's going on, and you don't even have to know what it is. I don't think they really know what chronic fatigue syndrome is, or fibromyalgia, or even maybe POTS. But I can tell you, my stem cells knew how to get in there and fix things up for me and make me feel better, regardless of what any doctor calls it. So I don't even own those diagnoses anymore.
I love how you just put that. They don't even know. And I believe that about a lot of things, right? One of the things I suffered from was leaky gut before I went on the Peru trip. And I did not understand until I was in I got hooked up with Heroic Hearts Project. They're a veterans charity. They're one of the few that I found that don't cater specifically to special operations forces soldiers. Most of the psychedelic retreats I found, and I'm kind of a little upset about it because there are a vast number of conventional forces that can benefit from these therapies. there's not enough charities out there that are doing the work. They all go to the special operations community, and that's not a knock on the special operations community by any means. It's just not as accessible for regular soldiers. So I consider myself very blessed to have gotten the opportunity with Heroic Hearts, but part of their program is 4 weeks of integration before and 4 weeks after. And I might have that a little wrong. It might have been like 6 weeks and 4 weeks. I can't remember. But they start teaching you about all these things and how your gut is literally connected to everything. It controls
It really
everything.
is your
And
primary brain, right? It's really more every 7 signals from your gut to your brain for one signal from the brain to the gut.
and that was a big part of all the changes that I made. I'm a sugar addict. Sugar is so bad, and so much so that now in fact, before we had this, part of my little snack for lunch or whatever was a piece of cake that my wife made me for my birthday last week. But that's the one time since I've been back from Peru that I've actively eaten something like that. Whereas before, she was baking cookies every day, or there was a cake, or there was some kind of sweet with just cups and cups and cups of sugar in it. And
I'm so glad you talked
you,
about that, Adam, because sugar is a poison, right? It is, and I'm a self-admitted sugar addict and salt addict, probably since high school. So I have, one of the blessings of being in the military is that you have to stay fit, right? You have to exercise. You have no choice. And so I white knuckled my way through with discipline because I can be very disciplined, right? You can give me a program and I can do it and I will stick to it and I will do it exactly right. But it wasn't easy and I hated it. But there is a patch that's sort of known to help people with addictions beyond the stem cell activation patch. This one is actually helpful to all your organs. But one of the great effects of it is it removes cravings for sugar or hunger. And so life changing, like for the first time in my life, the commercials or the donuts at the office or whatever, just they don't bother me. Like I'm not having to go, when's my next fix? Like I just don't think about it anymore. And I love that because that really was not the case for me ever in my whole life until now. And
I'm the same. I totally agree with that. The military, I admittedly, I've said this, I don't know if you've gotten to that episode yet or if I've even released it, but I was a very mediocre soldier. I could have been a much, much better soldier if I had the same mindset and tools that I have today. Right. And I mean, the life of an infantryman from 2003 to 2015 was very much train, deploy, train, deploy. So lots of long hours. The only food we had access to, because we weren't going to the DFAC, because usually we were out in the woods doing some kind of gun drill or some kind of movement to contact or whatever, is 9 o'clock at night. You're going to Burger King. You're coming back to the company. You're scarfing down this disgusting burger with a bucket of soda because you've been in the woods all day and you just want to eat. You still got 2 more hours of cleaning weapons, and that's your life. And so, I didn't pay any attention to it. I was just kind of going with the flow. And then, I get into the integration process to go to Peru, and I'm looking at this dieta and it's very bland. It's like no red meat. And then, a week before your trip, you're cutting out basically everything but chicken and greens, and no salt, no sugar. And I'm struggling. The sugar, it was so hard for me. But I go and do the experience. I come back and sugar is put in front of me and I don't want it. And I'm like, this is new to me. And so, here and there, I think I made it 5 months before I took, and I mean, I took it to the extreme. I looked for sugar in bread when we were at the store. If it didn't have more fiber than it had added sugar, I wouldn't buy it. If it had sugar, it had to be natural sugars. I took it way extreme, and about 5 months in, was it? Yeah, it was 5 months because it was Christmas time, and my best friend had come down here for Christmas to spend a week from Washington State, and it was his birthday, and we made him a cake, and I was like, I'm not eating any of your cake. He's like, come on, man, just have a small piece. Just have a piece of cake
why
with
do
me for my
people do
birthday.
that? Doesn't that make you so mad? Like, just let me alone. I just Why do you try to poison me?
Yeah, and it really didn't make me mad because for a long time I don't know, I just feel like everybody gets a cake on their birthday. Like that's just the one thing that has just kind of been. So I was the one that was insistent that my wife was going to bake him a cake, and he's like, "Okay, well if she's baking you a cake, you're having at least a tiny piece, right?" And I did. I had that tiny piece, and I was like, "Jordan, man, oof, like I don't feel good. This doesn't make me feel good." And to me, that was the best feeling in the world because I knew I had beat it at that point. I knew my life was never going to be what it was when I was extremely addicted to sugar. And I love having this conversation with you because not a lot of people have gotten to this point yet. There's a lot of things that are out there that we poison ourselves with. And you even mentioned like the pharmaceutical industry. Half the time I think you're right, they're just making shit up, and I'm kind of a conspiracy theorist on this. I learned that dentists have been pulling the wool over our eyes for years and years and years. And if for those that are listening that aren't familiar with this, if you get a cavity and they drill it and fill it, you're going to 100% get another cavity. And the reason for that is because a cavity is just an infection in your gums and it needs to be treated with antibiotics, not a drill. And I feel like the pharmaceutical industry does that with pills. They give you a pill to fix something, but it causes more side effects. So they have to give you more pills, which makes them more money. And it just becomes this out of control system. And I think if people would do their own research and kind of put in the hard work up front to break all of these bad habits that we have developed with how we eat, our relationship with what we eat. Even me, I was a overeater. I grew up pretty poor in southern Indiana. You've been to Indiana, you know that there's not a lot there. And you were
Little
up north.
cornfields. I heard you talking about your cornfields when one of your podcasts.
And we didn't have money, and so I think that contributed to my overeating. And then joining the army and going through basic training where you have 5 minutes to eat, so like that compounds it. But I now fast, and I can't tell you all of the benefits from fasting that I've got, particularly when I choose to do longer fasts. It's amazing. And it's so much fun to have these conversations with people who have changed their lifestyles to live this life. And so let's we could talk about this all day, and I know there's so much more stuff that you do. So I want to like, how do you envision your work with the stem cells, and where are you taking this, and where is this going for you? And is it improving the product so that it works better, and maybe you can get more of your husband back? Or is it just educating your network, your audience, and getting it in front of people to let people know that it exists? And I hope that it's affordable because I really
It
am
is
very
affordable.
interested
I mean,
in
that's
this.
perhaps the thing. I mean, you remember where it was $10,000 for an IV. The stem cell activation patches, you wear 12 hours on and then you take them off after 12 hours, and they're $99 for a 1 month supply. And there's a money back guarantee. I would say 80% of people experience positive benefits within 3 to 6 weeks, but it's recommended that you do a month for every decade you are old. You need to give it a chance. Cellular regeneration doesn't happen overnight. You didn't get in the situation, you're not going to get out of it overnight. So we want to, in fact, one doctor said 10%, expect 10% improvement every month. But I, I will tell you, I still do my day job, my director of client services. It's paying the bills. There is a business to the stem cell activation technology consultant world. And maybe one day, long from now, it will be my only job, because the intrinsic value and reward that I get out of having texts from people that happen all the time. I mean, I got the most fun. Well, we've seen. I can't even begin to tell you all the stories, but I got this great one just not long ago from someone that said, Darlene, I've been on the patches 1 month. My blood pressure stabilized in the 130s after being in the 170s for more than a year. My right knee pain and swelling is gone. My allergies attacks stopped. My vertigo stopped. My tinnitus stopped. My acid reflux stopped. I've lost 5 pounds. I'm swimming in the pool every day an hour, and I don't have sore muscles or fatigue or sunburn. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do you want to do a testimonial for me to share? And she's like, no, not yet. She goes, when do my wrinkles go away? it does actually help wrinkles, and there's lots of pictures, and so. But my point was that I have people. I have the single guy. I won't say his name. He's a high school classmate of mine. He was in a helicopter that was blown up over there. Everybody died except him. It basically shot by an anti-air missile. The whole thing on fire. Everybody crashes to the ground. He is the lone survivor, broken his back a million different places, and um, in a coma for months, paralyzed initially, told you'll never walk again, right? This is my friend doing the patches and experiencing improvements from week one. The ability, another friend who is actually just was referred to me by someone and said, can you help her? Has a third kidney, is legally blind, exhausted to the point where it was crawling to go to the bathroom, spent 3 days in bed and in so much pain. And we began to patch her, and she literally sent me a 10-minute voice message in text. And it was basically all of I'm not, she's on the patch that keeps her from craving things. And I slept through the whole night for the first time. And I've got all this energy, and I packed out 3 rooms, and I'm not in the emergency room, and the ICU is taking care of pain. And I can't believe this. And oh my gosh, Darlene, thank you. So imagine the contrast between your day job and then this stuff coming in on a daily basis when you help people with these patches. And so I do this. I would do this for free. And this is what when you should do something, right? When you would do it for free. And actually, I bought patches for a guy who doesn't have any money, barely is making ends meet, doesn't have enough money to put food on the table, and is in dropping weight down to, I think he was down to 85 pounds. Thought he was going to die any day now in excruciating pain. And I'm like, I'm just going to buy you these, because I can, and it's my tithing for the month. This is just going to be where I'm going to direct it I'm going to direct it right to you, because this is who I wanted to receive it. And I feel very compelled. I absolutely am on a mission to share this, because I do not think we would be where we are today if we would have started the patching 4 years ago. And there are people in the audience today who are not 4 years down the road and who could get their blood pressure or their diabetes or people just stop. They don't need the insulin. They have the insulin that they use. They don't need to be on a blood pressure medicine. They don't need a cholesterol medicine. In fact, that same gal that couldn't get out of bed for 3 days, in the first week, she had to drop her blood pressure medicine in half because it had dropped her blood pressure so dramatically, so quickly. So the results of what your body is capable of doing is remarkable. And I love this tribe like I loved my military tribe. I haven't had that community. I love my company, so don't get me wrong. And if anybody from my day job hears me, I do love my team. I love my job. It's different though. This is a group of people who want to give to others, want to help other people first and foremost, think in a way around holistic medicine the way I think, are doing the right things to take care of yourself, are willing to drink a lot of water, want to incorporate exercise, make sure that they're getting good sleep. I love being around people like this because, quite honestly, 4 years ago when we got the diagnosis, Adam, we cut out all alcohol, we cut out sugar, we cut out white flour, we cut out anything that wasn't organic, and we cut out genetically modified foods. And we did a very low carb diet because ketones are really good for the brain. And even when I'm not with my husband, I went to Vegas with my sister, and she's like, what do you mean you're not doing alcohol? She's like, we're in Vegas. And I said, we cut out alcohol. And she's just like, yeah, but you're not with them. Like, we cut out alcohol. And she's like, and you're really going to check on, is it olive oil or canola oil? And I'm like,
yes, I am. Really absolutely.
I just now I know. It's sort of like when you know better, you do better. And I learned something from this tribe of people that are helping other people every single day, whether it's stacking in the things that you can do in the alternate space, or just how to lift our spirits. Because I have all of these friends, and you know what else I love, Adam? I have a lot of girlfriends too. This is the first time in my entire world where I've actually had people that I work with that are women. I mean, I'm in a male-dominated technology group again. I literally every one of my guys is a guy again. Like I was the only vice president woman at the table, at the CIO table. Like I. It's not that I couldn't do that. I enjoyed that. It was fine. I love working with men. They're funny. There's a lot of benefit, but it's also kind of nice to have some women around.
I'm so happy that you found your tribe and your community, because so much uh, rides on that when you get out of the Army or the Navy or the Marines, Coast Guard, Air Force, Space Force now, whatever it is. That initial loss of community, because it is a community. It's very much a community, the team and all of that. But that's part of that loss of purpose, that loss of identity, that loss of community. And I actually just commented on a post yesterday of a guy who just retired yesterday and was like, I'm so grateful that there's people here on LinkedIn talking about veterans finding community through the transition, because I've been looking and I couldn't find one. And it's like, we're here, brother. We're here. And there are few of us right now, but there are us, those of us willing to step up and show you that there's a better way. My whole goal is to just be the guy I didn't have, and I think that's so important. And I think that's really leadership at its core, right? Just being someone to someone else that they didn't know they needed or don't have access to. And I'm also glad that you talk about, in that tribe, you learned about all these holistic things, because, our Western society and medicine, it's so ingrained in us. It's unnatural to think that something like an ayahuasca trip or journey or whatever you want to call it can really have such a profound impact on changing my life to the tune of 92 pounds. I'm not angry anymore. I completely changed the narrative in my head. Stem cells, right? Same situation. Like, people think because you have to leave the country that stem cells might be like a lesser risky technology, but in fact, it's the exact opposite, right? And fasting, right? I'm battling my parents right now, particularly my dad and stepmom, and they think that I'm insane because I fast 20 hours a day, and I try to do. I haven't done it in a while, but I try to do 48 hours at least, once, twice a
We've
month.
done a 5-day fast, my husband and I. Actually, I even heard that if the whole country would do once every year a 5-day fast, our medical bills and diseases would drop by like 70%. It was some extraordinary number.
Yeah, it's incredible. And a testament to that is Theodore McIntosh is one of my very best friends. He was staying with me at the beginning of the year. He's kind of he's a nomad. He lives a nomad lifestyle, and that makes him happy. He's a really good salesman, makes plenty of money, but he had spent 3 months in Colombia and then came and spent 3 months with me. And during that time, the pollen came out here in Florida, and he's got allergies. He's had allergies his whole life. And he and I, we play off of each other a lot, and he's responsible for a lot of pushing me. He's my accountability partner. And it means the world to me, because I wouldn't be sitting here, we're having this conversation with you, accomplished all the things that I've accomplished to this point without his friendship and brotherhood and all of that. But he did a 7-day fast while I was here. He no longer has allergies. He eliminated quite a bit of his pain.
So much of it's in our gut, right? If we can get the gut functional, and the dysbiosis in the gut, the microbiome is so much a part of all of our issues and our illness and our disease, that we just I think don't understand how toxic our world is and how important it is to detox. And I love that part of what our patches do is to detox you. They actually elevate your glutathione. If you're familiar with glutathione, if you're not, Adam, you need to learn about glutathione, and I would be happy to teach you. Glutathione is absolutely one of the most, first of all, it's your body's master antioxidant. So let's just start with there. As someone who had 4 autoimmune disorders diagnosis, I was, quote unquote, right? I was very in tune with what am I going to do to elevate my autoimmune system? And so I was getting glutathione IVs, taking glutathione orally because it's your body's master antioxidant and immune booster. Especially going into the pandemic, I was kind of freaked. Now, I will tell you, I managed to get through it without ever getting sick, in spite of taking care of my mom and dad who both got COVID. And I think it was because of partly glutathione, really, and all of the other things that I was doing. But one of the things I learned was the IV glutathione is like the best way at the time I knew, and it raised my glutathione levels 27% with a half-life of 7 minutes. And that I thought was, okay, that's what it is. But we have a pouch. First of all, the stem cell activation patch elevates your glutathione 30% and stays there all day, which is better already than the IV. But we actually have a glutathione patch that elevates glutathione 300% on average, and it keeps it there a day. And so what they're finding is when you can elevate glutathione, it regenerates cartilage, it protects the myelin sheath, it improves organ, it improves skin. And when you add it to the anti-inflammation and the stem cell activation patch, we can actually remove spike proteins that are occurring as a result of the vaccination or contracting COVID. Everyone who is the vaccination or got COVID has spike proteins, unless they have taken measures to get rid of them. Most people haven't, so most people have them, and they impact the gut, the lungs, the brain, and the heart, for like long-term impact. So people need to do something to get rid of their spike proteins. If you don't ever reach out to me to help with patches, do something to get rid of your spike proteins, right? But I love that this actually detoxifies the body. And for those people that have like knee issues, which they did a study with the anti-inflammation patch on one part of the knee and the glutathione patch on the other. All the participants in the study were supposed to go have knee surgery. After 2 or 3 months, none of them went on to have knee surgery because it had regenerated the cartilage. You could see it on the MRIs. It's really remarkable. And that patch, by the way, is $49 at the.
I'm gonna buy a lot from you probably right after the call, because my dad's had 2 knee replacements and he needs to go have his first one done again because he has no range of motion. We went to a nursery as part of like my birthday weekend trip. We bought the house in September, so we're looking to buy some trees or whatever to plant. And it was cool to spend the day with my dad, but like watching him get in the truck, he can't bend his leg enough, so it's like this awkward, like having to pick his leg up and like turn a weird way. And just hearing you talk about this, I should have done more research on it, but again, I didn't really know where to start, right? Because, I've heard the stories like what happened to you, right? Like you have to leave the country. It was suggested before I had this back surgery, right? I had a herniated disc that was pushing on my nerve at L4, L5, and they took out a significant amount of that disc, which really did help the pain, but I know it could be better. And so it was suggested to me to go get stem cells. And one of the guys that I was on the Peru trip with, he went and had it done, and it actually worked for him. I think he went to Mexico to do it, but he's like, dude, it was $15,000 each time I went. I was like, man, I don't have that kind of money, right? Like I don't have that kind of money. And
I was ready to mortgage the house, right? I would have done anything to get rid of my husband's early Alzheimer's, but
Of course. But no, I think it's amazing. And I'm so grateful to have you here today to talk about this stuff and bring it to light, because even I don't know about it. And I'm a huge advocate for the plant medicine and the mindfulness and the meditation. I love the red light therapy. I love the sauna therapy, the cold plunge therapy. However, I think there's some studies out there that say if you're a woman, you should really check to see if cold plunging is good or bad for you.
I'm not going to do cold plunge. Let me just tell you, I'm a cold water wimp. I think it started when I was a swimmer, early and getting into cold pools. I just don't want to do it. So you could tell me it's the most beneficial thing on the planet, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, for me, it's very much the same way. I don't want to do it, but I do it because it is hard and it forces me to do something really, really hard for myself. But speaking of hard, you wrote a book.
It was hard. I will first of all tell you, I would never have written. I would never have co-authored a book or been a contributing author to a book Well, I don't think anyway, at least not on this subject, because I was in an interview for a podcast and telling kind of my story, and we got into a lot more of the stuff before my exes and a lot of stuff. And
Yeah, just people being fucking bad human beings to other humans.
my dad is this stellar human being with great character integrity, and my mom and dad have been married forever, and they have this beautiful marriage. And so I just thought all men were that fabulous, right? And they're not. Like I had no idea how duplicitous and they could lie and all. A narcissist. What did even narcissists look like? So I did not marry well twice, and my health paid the price for it. I will honestly tell you, it is what was taking me down. But this woman said, Darlene, I would like for you to author a chapter in my book. And I said, all right, I can do that. And she said, it was middle of November, Adam. And I said, when do you need this? She said, November 30th. I had company coming in for 1 week. I literally had one weekend free. And I said, I can do that. I can do that. So
It's your typical response to everything else in your life. Like, oh, I can do that. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I can do
part
it.
of it was I was like, I just need to get it down. And I didn't angst over it. I didn't have enough time to angst over it. I didn't have enough. It wasn't like just about me. It was like other people too. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get it down. I'm going to look at it once or twice and I'm going to send it in. And I'm not going to, and then I just didn't think about it. Like I literally just, it was like, it was done. It was one of those check in the box and I'm out. And then it comes out, it becomes a bestseller. My friends read it and they're like, I had no idea. And they cry and they tell me how moving my story was. And how inspiring it was. And I'm touched by that. But I will tell you, I did not like, a lot of people will say, well, was it very therapeutic to, no, it was not therapeutic for me to write it. I didn't enjoy writing it at all. I actually don't even enjoy reading it because it was my life. And it's like all this ugly, it did end up well. Like the best part of this in my life was that, I was kissed by the angels when I met this husband, and he is the most beautiful human. I'm going to get emotional telling you how great he is. Like he is just stellar. And so to have this happen to him, like you could go grab any of those other two, they should have been like shot in a drive-by shooting somewhere along the way, quite honestly. But to have this happen to this husband, to this man, this beautiful Navy captain, 1,200 landings on an aircraft carrier, a naval aviator, went to Top Gun, legendary, actually created a persona called Ripper Man. The cape has gone up to space and people still are Ripper Man in that squadron. This stellar human being. And to watch him go through this with such grace, like talk about inspiring. There is never anything that I will ever face with the grace that he has faced this. And my daughters will tell you they would never have been married if they would never have seen what a beautiful marriage looks like. We have had the best marriage of anyone I know. Like it was just easy because he's so wonderful. He's just that wonderful.
How long have you been married?
It'll be 17 years November.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. It's not.
That's awesome to
totally
hear.
Different though. Right now, it's mom to child relationship. Right. The part of what I am working on in therapy and in other ways is just the grieving of the loss of my husband and the way that I've known him. And all that comes with that, partly because the patches have me feeling great, but partly I am busy and as a care provider, just haven't had the space to take the time, I'll get emotional. I can't just like break down in the middle of a podcast or when I'm at my day job, right? So it's sort of like I've got to find that opportunity to truly grieve. And I haven't quite done that yet, quite honestly.
Well, and it's essential to our healing journeys to understand, and this may not make sense for a lot of listeners depending on where you're at in your healing journey, but you get to this point where you have to be able to make space and time to sit with those uncomfortable emotions and really understand them. And this may be, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want, but obviously, this is probably going to take your husband all the way from you, correct?
In fact, Adam, today I am relocating him to a memory care home. There's like 3 people in there now, 2 care providers and someone that comes in at night. And they are incredibly intelligent people that know what to do and will keep him safe in a better way. I was this close to canceling, and one, if it wouldn't have been a veteran, like I'm like, I can't cancel on a veteran, and I thought it would be a good distraction for me, because this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I've had all these people, from the therapist to the doctors to everyone, say it's time, because it's basically taking me down, right? Ultimately, I don't want to go down with the ship. And when I know I'm doing all the things possible, from meditation and exercise and walking and therapy and eating right and sleeping and all the things, and I still have trouble breathing, I'm still having heart palpitations, I'm still having, this elephant in my chest, something's got to change. Like, I'm giving everything I have, and it's still taking me down. And my inflammation numbers actually doubled. And my doctor said, Darlene, you're going to die of a heart attack if you don't get more help. Like, this is not something you can do. And there's a nurse that said, like, this should have happened long ago. It's too much. It's too much. And I had 4 doctors say the care provider dies first. So take care of yourself. Right. So these are the reasons, but it's still brutal. It's a brutal process. So I will be in the fetal position probably tomorrow, like all day grieving.
I think the important part for the audience to take away from this is, I really want to stress this, because it's not ever stressed enough to us when we're in the military, and it's never stressed when we get out. But I want to be the change for that. Is it is okay to take care of yourself first. And I know that sounds, particularly in your situation, right? And thank you for sharing that, because you didn't have to share that. And I know that's deeply personal to you, but that's a lot of what this show is about, is being vulnerable and showing the ugly stuff, because we have to come through that, right? Like, you are still going to have a ton of life to live, and you're not doing yourself any favors if you put yourself off to the side. Like, you've had 4 doctors telling you should have done this a long time ago, and now they're telling you, like, look, Darlene, if you don't do this, you're going to die, right? Like that, there's no bigger smack in the face than that, right? Like, hearing those words and then having to face it, looking at the man that you love, this wonderful man, but also knowing, like, I think probably in the back of your mind, while it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever had to do, I think he probably, on some level, whether you know it or not, knows that you're going to be better off because of it. And like, there's something there, right? Like I feel like you probably made this decision not just because it's time for you, but because in some interconnected way we don't understand, you and your husband have really, like, leveled with this, and both know that this is what has to happen in order for, and it doesn't mean that you're done being married. It doesn't mean that you're not going to go visit them, but it does mean that, now you have help and somebody else who can bear some of that burden, so you don't have to do it alone. And I admire you for telling that story here and putting that out there for the audience as an example, because I think it's important that we have examples like you to show us the right thing to do and the right way to go about it. So I really do appreciate that from you.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that. And I think what has helped me in some regard, I did 2 Alzheimer's support groups this week. One of them, which was almost entirely devoted to me, and my situation this week. Like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, how do you even do this? How do people survive this? Right. And one person said, I'm the right person to love him, but I'm not the right person to care for him. And another guy said, when I transitioned my spouse, my wife, she did the transition fine. I was a wreck for 5 months. Like, people think it's, the person actually can, and earlier is better. When a person said, I've never heard anybody say, oh, I wish I would have waited longer. They always say I should have done it so much sooner. Because, and actually there's, in some of the books I've read to do my research, right, they'll actually say when you wait too long, they can't get comfortable and get established as a home there. And at a point in time, the decline is such that it's now a safety issue, right? He set off the burglar alarm twice in 3 days. He's awaking me 5 times a night. There's just all of these things. He shouldn't be left alone. I have a nurse with him right now. There's no it is now time. It is time. And I can know that rationally, and know that even if he had his full faculties and could have a conversation with me, he would never want me going through what I do every day for him. He would never want that. And I know that in my heart, because I know how much he loves me. But it doesn't make it any easier, really.
No, ma'am. No, I believe that 100%. Um, so moving forward, what advice would you have for transitioning veterans, maybe interested in entrepreneurship, and just kind of based on your career, your life experience, and everything that we've talked about, what would you want them to take away from our conversation today, and some lessons, that we can maybe kind of teach them from what we've talked about here today that can help us be those people we didn't have, or you know what I'm saying, like be that example.
Yeah, I think I would say, first of all, thank you for your service, right? I don't know anyone who regrets their military service. I think many regret getting out, but I don't know that people, they get so much experience and work ethic and intrinsic reward for the meaning of serving your country, and that you will take that with you forever. And you will always be immediate brothers and sisters to our military and first responder services providers. Always. Like, there's just a link. No matter where you go, no matter where you are in the world, you will have that connection around you. And I think as anyone goes through that transition, if you can find, more important than the job you do, because you can do almost anything, right? You can do this, you can do that, you can do all sorts of things. Is finding, well, others do it too. Other people all the time too. But it's about finding that cultural fit where you're working in an organization that has your values at heart. If it's something, like for me, that, if it's 100% about profit, this does not feed my soul. This is not something I can deal with. If it's somebody who doesn't care about people, I have grown up in the military where it's in your DNA to care about people. If that is, you just need to find what is it that's of most value to you and align your values in that new world, because that's the most important thing. Then you'll thrive and you'll do fine and you'll enjoy it. You need to enjoy it. You have a choice. Like, the neat thing about not being in the military is they're not just going to assign you here, there, or otherwhere. You get to choose, and if it's not a good fit, then you go find something that is a better fit for you, and you don't accept less than, and you'll be fine. And just 10 seconds of courage, and go get it done, and give it a try. And again, it's not forever. So if it doesn't work out, that's okay. Now what you don't want to do, and you learned something that you liked or didn't like, and now you just tried something else. And so I think, have the confidence and faith in yourself. Know that you are so much more capable than you. Oh my gosh, so much more capable than your non-military counterparts. You have strong work ethic. You have accountability. You have leadership. You have teamwork. You have communication skills. You have had autonomy. There's just so much that you've done that will translate. That's all intangible, all of it. Like that you may not even be able to put on a resume, but trust me, people hiring understand. They hire for potential and the ability of what you can do more than what you have done.
I think that's an awesome message, because it's what we talk about here all the time. You are capable of so much more than you give yourself credit for, and oftentimes I think then other people will give you credit for as well, which means you have to block the noise out, right? Like, don't listen to the noise. I'm guilty of doing that for a lot of my life, listening to the noise of others. And it's not a good way to be. It sabotages the true self. And I don't like that, right? I like very much who I am, and what, finding out what I'm capable of every day is different, right?
Adam, you're part of what is your gift today, and the ability to gift and take care and coach others, and to be even able to do this podcast. The reason you care is because of the hard things you went through. Like, you wouldn't be here today doing this if it weren't for that. I wouldn't be here doing this either if it weren't for this thing, right? So the hard things forge us into a strength that is um, really powerful, and it's making us use. I, I think that the power of those hard things in our life, you've talked about transformational growth and growth mindset and lots of things that I agree with 100%. And I do think that um, they're part of what makes us great, these hard things. And so, we can't lock them up in a box, put them away, and call them done. We just learn from them, we grow from them, we embrace them. And you know what? I think they serve to connect us to other people who are going through hard things in a way that we wouldn't otherwise. And I'm here to tell you, I was the last person you could have ever convinced I would ever have been on a podcast in my entire life. Even as much as a year and a half ago, if you were to look at my Facebook page, there was nothing on it, LinkedIn, nothing. I really just didn't have a footprint because, well, I posted when my daughter graduated from the Naval Academy, and I posted when my daughter graduated from the Air Force Academy, like any proud mama would, but that's kind of it. But now, um, this message, this story, this help is bigger than me. And when you can find something bigger than you, whether it's the military or your next mission in life, like you have, helping others, it'll get you up out of bed every day and help you enjoy. Like, this is not work to me. This is a joy and something that is helping my heart today in what will be probably one of the worst days of my life, quite honestly. So I thank you for it, and for having me on your great show.
Well, I thank you for not canceling and for coming on the show. And to be completely honest, if you would have told me, I totally would have understood. And so I'm very grateful now, knowing what you're going to go through later this afternoon. And I wish you all the best, T's and P's, from the bottom of my heart. I like too that you said, I wouldn't be sitting here. You wouldn't be sitting here if not for the past, right? And the things that I think a lot of people, and this is the point I want to make, a lot of people say, oh, well, this happened to me. I challenge you to reframe that. And that happened for you, because without those things, we are not the people we are today, having the conversation that we're having today. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I would like for the audience to get from all of these shows is, you are not a sum of the things that happened to you, but you are a sum of the things that happened for you. And when you learn how to understand that, the whole world opens up to you, and you just see things differently, and you approach things differently, and you lose that sense of fear to try different things, and you do understand what you're capable of. And so I like that you touched on that, and it's very true. And I couldn't agree more with that. So having said that, I think I've taken enough of your time today. Tell everybody how they can get in touch with you. How can they find out about the stem cells? Where can they buy your book? I was like you and not a big social media guy until I learned the power of building a personal brand and having an audience. And it's really not as scary as you think it is. And I got news for you conspiracy theorists out there. The government knows everything about you anyway. So just come off that horse real quick.
Yeah, the best way is to go to my website, iamreverseaging.com. So iamreverseaging.com. And they can, anybody can connect with me there and get a free consultation. We can walk through. I like to listen, sort of a discovery call to understand, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? and then we can work through, I would say almost everyone really needs the stem cell activation patch and the anti-inflammation patch. The only person that really can't wear that stem cell activation patch would be someone with an alien organ, because it's going to boost the immune system so much, and they're typically on immune suppressant drugs. So I would want them to be very carefully monitored by their doctor. But there are other patches I think would be fine. But typically we start with the consultation discovery call, and I can help people know and get wholesale. Like, I can get people a better deal than they'll look online and see retail of $150, and I can get them for $99, and they'll see $79 and I can get them for $49. So I can get them free sleeves. I can there's a way as a brand partner, technology consultant, that I can craft deals that you wouldn't know how to do, that can get you free product. So I love doing that for people and helping them save money, because quite honestly, one of the first things you're going to want to do after you get your own experience is share it with other people, because you won't be able to. When I was first introduced, my person that introduced me said, well, would you be interested in the business? And I laughed in her face. I said, are you kidding me? I have a full-time job. I'm taking care of my husband who has Alzheimer's. Absolutely not. I have no time in my life for a business. And yet here I am, finding it in the nooks and crannies and margins of my day, because it's that important to me, and because people are that important to me.
I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Darlene, thank you so much for being here and doing this. I'm so grateful for you, and we have to stay in touch, definitely.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I look forward to that, and thank you for all that you're doing with your podcast and helping people, so many people, especially the first responders and those in such great need.
Yes, ma'am. We greatly appreciate you, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.